911 location of your emergency.
All units, we have a report of an active shooter at the supermarket on Missouri Avenue. Suspect is armed with an assault rifle.
Welcome to another episode of Reclassify 911, a podcast dedicated to seeing that our 911 public safety dispatchers are properly recognized as the first responders they truly are. That means correcting the federal classification of administrative support to that of protective service occupation. That is, from a clerical position to that of a first responder. Hello, my name is Paul Jokerst, and I ended my law enforcement career as a chief of police, but now manage the second busiest 911 center in St. Louis County. Now, some watching may be thinking a 911 dispatcher is no more than a secretarial type position and should not be reclassified nor recognized as a first responder. I am here to tell you that that could not be any further from the truth. In this episode, I would like to touch on just 4 reasons why 911 public safety dispatchers are in fact first responders. While I personally know of hundreds of examples, I will touch on just 4 during this episode. All of these have recently taken place, in fact, in this past month. From the state of Idaho, a 911 dispatcher answers the emergency line only to hear that a husband was reporting that his wife was having difficulty breathing and was currently unconscious. The 911 dispatcher, without hesitation, started giving the caller instructions on the application of CPR. By the time paramedics arrived at their home, the wife was awake and talking. 911 dispatchers are trained to respond to an incident just as I did as a police officer, and in doing so, this dispatcher remained calm and provided needed medical assistance to save a human life. Another example comes from the state of New Jersey, where some teenagers were playing on a basketball court when one of them collapsed. A call was made to 911 where another 911 public safety dispatcher instructed a teenager how to perform CPR. Once again, when paramedics arrived, the patient had been revived and is expected to make a full recovery. I not only congratulate this 911 dispatcher, but also for the heroic efforts of that young teenager. Both of them working together saved another human life. Another example comes from the state of North Carolina, where a terrified parent called 911 because their infant child had stopped breathing. This scenario, in no doubt, is every parent's worst nightmare. To walk into your baby's room and find your child in the crib not breathing. While EMS was being dispatched to this 911 dispatcher immediately put her training into action and told this parent exactly what to do. However, in this case, CPR was being performed on an infant by the terrified parent. After a few moments, that dispatcher started hearing crying through the phone line. What a comfort and joy that dispatcher and that parent, for that fact, had to be feeling at that moment. More importantly, because of the training required of our 911 public safety dispatchers, in this case, an infant child was saved. As if those 3 are not enough on their own, my final example for this episode comes from the state of Utah, where a 911 public safety dispatcher took a call from a panicking father who was yelling that his wife had just gone into labor. As with many other such dispatchers, this 911 dispatcher also went through intense medical, fire, and police training and was properly trained to respond to this call, not just react. Not only was this dispatcher able to talk the father through the delivery of that child, but also how to remove the umbilical cord that was wrapped around the baby's neck. That is when the paramedics arrived and took over from there. And the newborn is doing well today, by what we hear. Now, these are just 4 examples of the hundreds that occur on a daily basis in our 911 centers across this nation. They are just 4 examples of why it is a gross misclassification to recognize these men and women as administrative or clerical support. I call upon Missouri elected officials in Jefferson City to do the right thing. Recognize 911 public safety dispatchers throughout the state of Missouri as the first responders they are. I ask that you introduce and pass legislation for Governor Parsons to sign, correcting this wrong. This is not something new. Several states, as you can see by this map, are already taking the steps necessary to do just this. Together, let's change Missouri to blue on this map and recognize the work of our 911 dispatchers. And to the elected officials in Washington, D.C., I ask that you join with the 50 other representatives from across the nation and co-sponsor Bill H.R. 2351, which was introduced by Congresswoman Norma Torres of California, which would reclassify these dedicated men and women at the federal level as well. 911 public safety dispatchers take calls for help on a daily basis, and thankfully, they are properly trained to react and respond, more importantly, to incidents like the ones that I described to you today. And of course, there are many more. Their job description goes well beyond that of an administrative assistant or clerical position, and the reclassification of these men and women will give them the recognition they properly deserve. Let us work together to see that this change is made, a change that is desperately needed. I would like to thank you for watching and hope you will join us again next time for another episode of Reclassify 911.